Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the brand new 2025 Mazda CX-70, and it's even a Turbo S Premium, which is a pretty premium trim level. And even beyond that, it has polymetal gray metallic paint, the red Nappa leather interior, so in person, this is a seriously sweet ride. And today I get to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of this brand new model by Mazda to help you guys at home decide if this might be worth your time and money. So today you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to the Goody Motor Mazda group for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested. They're a fantastic group to work with. And with that said, let's dive right into this review. And if you guys like Mazda, the brand new CX-70, or my video, please consider liking my video. That small act of kindness, it really goes a long way. It helps me know you want to see more stuff like this, and it helps you by having YouTube choose to show you more stuff like this. Thank you. But if you're new to the Mazda brand and you're unfamiliar with their recent history, for the last few decades, Mazdas have really been known for being well-built, Japanese assembled, reliable, affordable vehicles that are just a great value at the price point that they're offered. And a lot of Mazda owners do seem to love their vehicles. But this company is not one of the giants like Toyota, or like the Volkswagen Group, or even what Kia and Hyundai have become. Mazda doesn't sell nearly as many units, and personally I think they're a little bit underrated for how good their products are. But like a lot of manufacturers, especially in the recent years, they've kind of focused more on luxury. So some of their brand new models, such as this, the CX-70, which it's basically built off of the CX-90, it's kind of become a more performance-focused luxury vehicle with an all-wheel drive system that's more rear-wheel drive focused. It has an inline 6 turbo, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because there are 3 different power levels that you can have with your CX-70. You can either have a plug-in hybrid. That's a little bit more expensive. It does start at about $55,000. Or you can have this one that has an inline 6 turbo engine with a little electric motor on the front. And it starts at about $40,000, but that's for the less powerful version. This one is the Turbo S Premium. So it makes 340 horsepower. I'll show you under the hood in just a little bit. But it's actually a pretty good deal. It MSRPs a little bit over $50,000. And it offers quite a bit of stuff. But even at about $55,000, I think Mazda's really kind of sticking to their basic ethos of offering you a really good value for the price point that it is. These are supposed to compete against things like the BMW X5, like the Lexus RX, like the Grand Cherokee, which we know that those vehicles are not cheap, especially in today's time in 2024 and 2025. So forgetting everything that you're getting with this one for $55,000, although that is a pretty penny, and you should know that this is a luxury SUV, a luxury vehicle, it is actually pretty affordable for how much you're getting, how many safety features this has, while also being a top safety pick. So you know that if you do choose to put your money into Mazda, you and your family are protected. Kind of like Subarus, most of the models are top safety picks, so that is a high priority, a high concern for this automaker. But although this is weighted down with a pretty big engine and all the luxurious features, it actually is pretty manageable. Overall, it's about 16.6 feet long, and you can see it fits in this average size parking space pretty well. The crazy thing is the wheelbase is 10 feet, so that's a really long wheelbase for only a 16-foot vehicle, meaning it's pretty planted and stable and performance focused when it's on the road. It's roughly 6 feet wide and about 5.6 feet tall. It weighs about 4,700 pounds, and let me tell you, you can feel the weight when you are driving it. Even though the Sport Tune suspension and the independent suspension at every corner does a good job of masking that, it still is a fairly heavy vehicle. What's sad though is that the payload capacity on this is only 850 pounds. So between you and your 4 passengers and all of your stuff, you can only hold 850 pounds in this vehicle. The final drive ratio is a 369, so that's fairly aggressive for putting the power down, but also getting decent MPG. This has about 8.1 inches of ground clearance with its all-wheel drive system, and it can do a full circle in about 38 feet. But the last few things to mention here is when you lock the vehicle, the gas door unfortunately does not lock unless you can change the settings in the computer, and it does need premium fuel, so the bumps can attempt to siphon some of your 18.5 gallons of premium fuel. But otherwise, the CX-70 is rated for about 23 city, about 28 highway with this performance hybrid system that this inline 6 turbo has, meaning its max road trip and range is just over 500 miles. And then it has a 275, 45, 21 wheel and tire. It's a Falcon tire, and it only seems to have about 9/32 seconds of tread, but it feels good, it feels sticky, and it doesn't really kick up rocks and add much road noise from what I've experienced so far. And then this is your key. It's the typical Mazda key with lock, unlock, power lift gate to lift and lower, and then the panic button. But honestly, you can leave that in your pocket because you do have the proximity key features on this Mazda. The driver's side door panel actually looks really nice, even though there's kind of a combination of materials. The door card feels almost like red leather like the rest of the interior and the seat. The handle on Mazdas I actually really like. It feels solid. You have a bottle holder, some snacks, and then a speaker right here, and then Bose advertised up top, which Bose and Mazda have had a partnership for a long time. Otherwise, CX-70 rubberized mats, rubberized pedals, probably a fuse box right there. I'm assuming that's what that is. You have a hood release, you have memory seats, you have your auto start stop, traction control, some safety features. You have ventilation, you have lighting, you have your tilt and telescope features for the electronically controlled wheel. That does have paddle shifters on the back. And then you have a heated, ventilated power seat. The red Napa leather really looks pretty cool, and then the dual pane panoramic moonroof up top. Sitting inside this all new model, it really reminds me of what the CX-90 was like, because this is basically the two-row version. But like most Mazdas, everything is ergonomically designed, well-pleasing, and easy to reach. I feel like everything is the right height, the right placement, and I mean, it's a power seat, so otherwise you just get yourself comfortable wherever you need to be. The horn, typical Mazda part spin, it's loud enough, it's kind of high pitched, but that's what most horns sound like these days. And it's a leather wrapped wheel, it's heated, you have all your physical climate controls and buttons there. You have the 12.3-inch display, ventilation, you have a 12 volt, some storage, your cup holders over here, your drive modes for sport or off-road, your shifter, some more features. You even have the 360-degree cameras on this one, which is really cool. But when you fire it right up with the push button start, it roars to life, but this engine is kind of quiet, and for that reason, it's not even worth showing what it sounds like revving on camera, because it just sounds like wind noise. Otherwise, you can go through the info button and check out some of the more in-depth displays. Actually, right now, it took a second for it to load, but it's a nice timeless digital display, and it looks like a lot of the physical displays on old Mazdas. Otherwise, this is nice. It has the French doors with 2 USB styles, and because the transmission is under here, because again, it's rear-wheel drive focused for the all-wheel drive system, there's not a lot of depth to it, but there's enough width and length that you can still store some good stuff under here. Otherwise, you have garage door openers, you have some lights, everything is LED on this one, sunglass holder, you have the light up here that turns on when you slide it, and then you can also slide this, which is a nice feature. Otherwise, this is your control to move the sunshade, or to move it back, or to tilt, or to slide. So there's a lot that you can do with this dual pane panoramic moonroof. But otherwise, it lets a lot of light in. It's thankfully darkly tinted, and it didn't feel overly hot driving around thus far. With that said, let's turn it off and I'll show you what the back's like. The rear door panels on this actually look like they were designed by the exact same engineer team that designed the front, which I know that sounds silly, but sometimes that's not the case. You even have this bonus sunshade to give you a little bit more privacy and prevent the sun from hitting you, similar to the factory tint on this one, which these combinations do a really good job. Otherwise, look how big that door opens. It's probably opening at over 70 degrees. This seat can recline, and I have it reclined right now. It's a 60-fold, so you can recline it with this or fold it forward. You even have a bar down here to where you can slide the whole seat forward or back, which is really interesting, and you know, a feature you're often only going to find on luxurious cars. But sitting behind the driver position that I was just in, I have about that much room in front of my knees, which is adequate. It's not as spacious as some other vehicles in this class, or say the Honda Passport, but it does a good job. I have a map pocket, ventilation, heated seats, climate controls, USBs, an armrest, and with how big this panoramic moonroof is, I have a lot of natural light above my head, but I still have about that much room above my head, which is nice. This is a comfortable place to be. It looks nice, and I could imagine being chauffeured in here and riding across the country if I needed to. With that said, let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. If I'm being honest, the rear of the CX-70 doesn't look particularly attractive to me. It just kind of looks like a minivan rear end, but it does have a little bit of aggression from the taillights, kind of like the front fascia, where it almost looks like a little bit of a face. And then if you can see the light change right there on camera, almost like a frowny face, and the Mazda emblem is the nose. Anyways, there's about 4 ways to open the hatch, at least 4 ways that I'm familiar with. Just push the button on the dashboard, climb through the back seats, push the button that's underneath the Mazda nose emblem right there, or just use the remote, and the power liftgate does a really good job to open up. Is it going to open up? Maybe it's not going to open while the vehicle's running, so we're going to turn that off and we'll come right back out. It's always fun to figure out things on camera. That way we are learning together. Otherwise, the power liftgate seems to work really well. Typical Mazdas with this feature, you can lock and lower, or you can just lower. Back here, you actually have the setup that contains dogs and fur and things like that, but you have a pretty spacious rear end. You have about 40 cubic feet back here. You have some ventilation because remember, this came from the CX-90, which had a third row, hence why there's basically armrests back here and the window to look out between the C and the D pillar. You have an LED light. You can drop the seats right there, which is a really cool power feature to lower them. More ventilation on the passenger side. And then under here, you have a spare tire. It's just a temporary. You have the tools that you need to change it. But otherwise, this is a pretty spacious vehicle. To have 40 cubic feet behind the second row on a 16.6 foot long vehicle is really nothing to gawk at. And with that said, let's lower it back down and come around to the passenger side. If you're the lucky duck that gets to ride shotgun, you're going to have the same design door panel, minus a few of the extra controls from the panel that the driver gets. Still nothing really on the door sill, just a plastic trim piece. Power seats, it's still ventilated, heated. The backpack loves it, it's having a good time. I do, of course, wish, like every vehicle, that there was transmission, tunnel storage, above the glove box storage, but thankfully the actual glove box is actually pretty well sized. I don't see any 12 volts in here, and I didn't see any underneath in the floorboard, but hey, at least there's quite a bit of storage here, and then all the airbags listed around it. Remind you that you're driving something that's safe. That's a top safety pick. But I know what you guys want to see. You want to see the engine. You want to see the 3.3 liter turbo and that little hybrid motor. So let me show you that next. Before I completely show you the engine, I just want to point out that Mazda does have this little engine cover that you just have to twist those hooks on each side, and then you flip it up, and then you get the attachment to hook up to there. But the hood really opens pretty high on this vehicle, especially when you have it all the way up. That's a really big hood, hence why it needs to hold that giant engine cover, because an inline 6 turbo is a long engine, so it's a long engine cover to cover that thing up. And that's with the engine cover up. But under the hood, this again is a 3.3 liter inline 6 turbo engine that has an electric motor attached. So the peak power numbers between everything, again, this is the peak numbers, is about 340 horsepower, 5,000 RPM, and 369 foot-pound-feet of torque at 2,000 RPM. You can see that the turbo is on this side with the exhaust manifold on this side of the inline 6. The induction side is on the other side. You have your reservoirs scattered throughout. Because this is a front-facing engine, because it's a rear-wheel drive focused car, the alternator is down here. The serpentine belt is on the front of the vehicle, just like a rear-wheel drive vehicle. You have the oil dipstick, you have the oil fill, you have your coolant reservoir right there, your air filter, induction through the grill. Overall, it looks pretty compact. You can see a lot of the mechanical components, so I don't know that this would actually be that difficult to work on, assuming you don't have any issues with the electronic hybrid component of it, which peaks out at about 17 horsepower and around 113 foot-pound-feet of torque from that little electric motor. With that said, let's drop the hood and take it for a drive. Initial driving impressions of the all-new CX-70 is this thing gets right up to speed. I can hear the electric motor, and then I can feel the torque and the push of the turbo boost, and honestly it feels pretty good. But what I also notice is that this is a big vehicle. Even though it's only about 16.5 feet long, it has some mass, it has some weight. That's only about a half foot longer than my own personal Subaru Outback, but it weighs about 700 pounds heavier, and I can really feel the weight, especially when I turn. Although Mazdas do feel really good when they turn. A little bit of a wheel chirp right there, gets right back up to speed with, you know, just about a third of the throttle pedal. This thing feels good, it feels really agile, and visibility overall is actually pretty nice on this all-new Mazda. The A pillar is pretty thin, the B pillar, it's a little bit thicker, the C, a little bit thicker still in the D, but the side beyond the B really doesn't matter, because that's where these giant side mirrors come in handy. And with all the safety features that this one has, I think you're gonna have a pretty good time driving it around. And you know what, guys? If there's no other traffic coming here, let's do a U-turn and show you what the 18-foot turning radius actually looks like. Yeah, we didn't even have to go off-roading right there. And then right back up to speed at half throttle. The engine actually sounds really good. This inline 3.3 liter turbo 6. It's a pretty cool power plant, and I've enjoyed driving these every single time that I've driven one in the CX-90s. But overall, with the red leather interior, it's comfortable. These seats are even ventilated, and because it's getting pretty warm outside, and this car's been sitting in the sun for a while, I had that feature turned on just a little while ago, and I'm glad that it has it. Mazda cooled seats are pretty neat because they don't just blow more cold air onto you when you're already sweaty, but they try to extract the heat, which is nice. The backpack's having a good time. The Bose speakers on this one actually sound really good, and I have Bose speakers in my own personal Miata, and personally I really like it. Like most Mazdas, this feels good. It feels sportier than it should be, and for about $55,000, that's not cheap. That is more than the average new vehicle transaction, but honestly, this vehicle offers a lot at that price point. You can fit full-size adults in the back seat, have 40 cubic feet behind the second row, so it just feels like a really big, really luxurious, Japanese-built 5-seater SUV. And with that said, I don't have any reasons to not recommend it, but I always test drive the competition. And with that said, let's get to the 0 to 60, and then we will wrap this up with my final thoughts. 0 to 60 in the all-new CX-70. Keep in mind, we are a mile above sea level, so even though this vehicle's turboed, it is still going to be down in power, at least 6 or 7%. I'm in sport mode, traction's off. I'm going to brake rev it. Let's see what it can do. Doesn't rev very high with the torque converter. And then dang, does that pull really nicely. True 0 to 60 came in at 7.34 on this test. My final thoughts of this brand new 2025 Mazda CX-70 is there's a lot to love. It's not perfect, it's more expensive than the average vehicle and more expensive than what the average buyer can really afford, even though it does have a Mazda badge. But is it worth $55,000? Well, if you're comparing this to the competition, those luxurious vehicles mentioned earlier like the X5 and the RX, this is a really nice vehicle. It offers a lot for the price point. It gives you a lot of fun between the driving experience, having the independent suspension, having the sports tune steering that this offers, and having almost 370 foot-pound-feet of torque. Sure, it might not have been as fast as you guys were expecting on GPS, but keep in mind, with me in the vehicle, it's almost 5,000 pounds. It only peaks out at 340 horsepower, so still doing a low 7 seconds 0 to 60. That's fast enough to have some fun. That's fast enough to do everything that you might need to do with a 5-seater vehicle. And having only 5 seats, I feel like that fits this platform better than the CX-90 with the third row, because the third row is always cramped. It's always, it always stinks to have to climb through the back and to get fitted back there. And if you're an adult, if you're an aging adult, if you're a grandparent or someone, you're not going to want to have to do that. And having the third row isn't usually the safest place to be, so you're not going to want your kids back there either, probably. I'm assuming, I guess I don't know what you ultimately want. But anyways, my opinion is this is a good vehicle. Driving it today, I have no hesitation to recommend it to you guys. I just recommend you test drive all the competition. Make sure that you guys are buying the best vehicle for you, because I don't want you to spend your money on something that you ultimately don't want and that future you isn't going to be happy with. And with that said, if you guys like this video, please consider liking this video. Comment your thoughts and opinions below on this brand new, all new CX-70, and subscribe if you haven't already. And huge thanks to Goody Motor Mazda for letting me borrow this one. Remember, I'll link them below. They are really a good Mazda dealership to work with. And with that said, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care. See ya.